Honestly, it just took my breath away when I read it this morning. Here goes, people. Our MPs are going to get an inflation-busting pay rise. They're currently paid around £86,000 a year. It's going to go up to over £91,000 a year. What do you make of that? Have they earned it, in your opinion? Should they take it, in your opinion? Your texts are already coming in. This from Mo, a new texter. Hi Sangita, love the show. Put MPs on a basic average salary and watch how the economy shifts for the better when their decisions have a direct impact on their own personal lives. This from someone who's forgotten to pop their name on at the end. They are destroying the country, our MPs. They should get less, if anything. What do you make of the fact that MPs will get an inflation-busting pay rise? 0345 6060 973. Let me tell you more. Rishi Sunak, our multi-millionaire PM, will accept a 5.5% increase in his salary for being an MP. That was confirmed in a statement by Number 10. The Independent Parliamentary Standards Authority, or IPSA, has recommended all MPs' salaries rise to £91,346 in April, and that will be up from £86,584. Now then, the uplift is higher than the rate of CPI. That's the measure of inflation that we now broadly use. So, CPI was 4% in January. Their pay rise will be 5.5%. What do you make of that? Lines are open now. 0345 6060 973. I'm sorry. I'm really struggling to say this with a straight face. It's just unbelievably tin-eared of them, isn't it? The struggle, the sacrifice, the financial pain, the effect on people's mental health, the effect on their families, the effect on their relationships, the cost of living crisis. The average salary in this country is under £35,000. Sunak has just been talking about cutting benefits to increase tax cuts for working people, whilst forgetting to say that the vast majority of people on benefits are in fact working people. Sometimes I just run out of words. I don't know what else to say about this anymore. About the complete disconnect between what is happening in Westminster and what is happening in your lives, in the way you feel that today's politics has let you down. They don't have to vote this through. The MPs don't have to vote through their own pay rise. They could just say, this year we're going to park it. It's okay. The country's been through hell. We don't have enough to spend on the NHS or education. People can't see a doctor. They're on waiting lists. Kids who need extra help at school can't get it, which plays into the next hour, by the way, 3 o'clock. Some of those kids getting suspended are those that cannot get extra support in schools because we're not funding them. Half the buildings are falling down. There's racked concrete, for God's sake. Help me out here.
To be honest with you, I'm getting to the point where I'm thinking, what about the people who, create the jobs? They have to stick their necks out. They have to take a lot of risks. They create the jobs that people can then work in. They need to be addressed also. And also the fact that these MPs, they're working very hard on our behalf behind the scenes, and their whole lives are just taken up by what they're doing for us. And I really think that they need to be paid for that. If you were running a big firm, you would be paid a lot more than that. And they're running the country. They're also trying to negotiate with other countries, getting us deals and everything else. They have to be paid well. How the hell are they going to be motivated otherwise? It's ridiculous to say they shouldn't accept because they don't need it. How do anybody know? How do you know, or any of us know, what they need? It's a matter of what they deserve. And I really feel they've gone through hell for the past 10 years between COVID and this and that and the other. And really, I feel that, the poor are getting free legal, they're getting all the rest, they get everything free, they don't pay any taxes, most of them. I mean, some people work a little bit, but then there are other people who are just defrauding the state, and they have businesses in Morocco and everything else. Nobody even looks into that aspect of the people on the dole. They come here and none of their background is checked whatsoever, and yet they're laughing up their sleeves at us, taxpayers, high taxpayers, low taxpayers. I don't care what you call them. They're all taxpayers, and that's our money. And we're supporting them. They should have to work for their money, like the rest of us. So, and I'm sorry if you don't like to hear that, and I'm sorry if your listeners don't like to hear it, but I'm a hard-working person. My family came from nothing. I worked myself up, and I can write a book about my background. But the point is, we've always worked. And it's the work ethic that I'm after here. And I'm looking at the positive side of getting everybody up off their backsides to do some work in this country, and then we will have a good country. The more people are sitting at home vegetating and letting their children go to school on their own in the morning because they're still in bed, I'm sorry, but there are pros and cons to all stories.
Absolutely. Vicky, I agree with you, and I appreciate you being a first-time caller, but can we just unpick some of the things you said? Lots of people getting free legal. Actually, if you were to talk to anybody in the legal field, particularly solicitors who are doing legal aid work, they will tell you that the legal aid budget has been shrunk back like never before. There was a story just in the papers this week talking about how there are now legal aid deserts in this country, entire swathes of the country where you cannot find a legal aid solicitor to do work for you. So I don't think it's fair to say that they all get free legal. I agree with you, Vicky, absolutely. We should be cracking down on those people who are perpetrating benefit fraud, but that's not really the issue today. The question here is about public servants who are at the higher end of the wage bracket. And those public servants in this case happen to be MPs who are allowed to take second jobs, and many, many of them do. And the question here is, when we have been through such a period of hardship, does it help win over or undermine public trust when MPs appear to be on course to accept an above inflation pay rise? That's the question.
As far as I'm concerned, we all have opinions. My opinion is get everybody out of bed in the morning, get them working, get them doing something for their money that they're getting from our pockets, and get them to get up and sort out their lives. And believe me, I mean, unless they're deaf, dumb and blind, that should be happening, but it's not. They're getting more and more money. A friend of mine has just gone through a court case. She spent $8,000 trying to get a tenant out of her property, a totally toxic tenant who had legal aid. And when we got to, when she got to court, because I was there with her, the judge said, I'm appalled that this has gone on for a year and 2 months on the public purse, and I'm going to look into this.
Okay. Well, I'm glad that that's being dealt with in her case, but what I would say again is that is a separate issue to the one that we are discussing, which is, of course, about MPs' pay and whether or not they should be getting an above CPI pay rise. So they're going to be awarded 5.5%, whereas actually, and it's interesting, you were talking about private business there. In fact, private businesses, on average, are getting employees are receiving about 5%, so less than our MPs are. That is expected to fall in the coming year, that according to the CIPD. So I did look that up before coming on air.
Well, I'm ever so sorry that your last caller is so angry that people like me need benefits, but, I hope she gets over that.
She's very cross with you.
I know, and I'm terribly sorry that I can't find someone to employ me, and I live in this country at the moment. But when it comes to the MPs getting a pay rise, that will give the average MP 4 times the total amount of benefits I get in a year. This is a government that has cut warm hand discounts for disabled people, that is squeezing the benefits thing, who have up to £221,000 in expenses for their offices and their office staff. Many of the MPs are actually employing members of their own families. So between them, they're making into the hundreds and something thousands. They have an expense bill that just, if you look at the government figures, it is quite terrifying. Last night, I went online to look at my local MPs. One of my local MPs gets more in her subsistence and second home allowance, nearly twice what I get in my benefits. So you may say that we don't pay our MPs enough and all we've got to keep up, but I find it morally reprehensible that a government voting against the poor in this country can get that much money out of us.
I'm going to be controversial here, and I'm going to say that not only do I think they should be paid more to accept the £91,000, they should actually get paid more. But if you hear me out, I'll explain why I think that.
So I agree with you.
I think there should be some reform in that.
Yes,
in the sense that once they become an MP, there's two things should happen. Once they become an MP, they should divest themselves of any outside influence, i.e. shares, landlordships, anything like that, and they should become a full-time, no second job, nothing. And also, all parties should be funded by the states, and that means that nobody outside of politics should be able to influence anybody. And I agree with your last caller there about the Prime Minister not getting paid enough. They should get paid enough so that they shouldn't have any outside influences making them think about what's best for them or their personal family, whatever it is. It should be, these people should be 100% focused on the politics of the day, serving the people. At this moment in time, they don't do that. You've got so many people with so many different jobs outside. There was one MP that had 5 different directorships. I think it was like 6 hours a week. So he's working 30 hours a week in directorships. Where's he get the time to do his job?
So, Steve,
You know what I mean?
I agree with you 100%. And what I find interesting is that when I say why are they voting, should they really be voting themselves a pay rise above inflation? It's interesting how people leap to the conclusion that I think that they shouldn't have a pay rise overall. I agree with you 100%. We need a completely reformed system. The point I am making is this, which is the same one as yours, which is currently our MPs can have second jobs. That means that according to Sky News analysis that was published last year, between 2019 and 2023, for example, Theresa May made over £2 million in earnings outside her MP's salary. Chris Grayling, £224,000. There were Labour MPs as well. One has made over £200,000. Another made over £160,000. I agree with you. We need wholesale reform.
I just don't think they're paid enough. I think the fact that me as a lowly IT consultant is paid the same as the Prime Minister, there's something wrong with that.
You're not lowly. IT consultants aren't lowly. I know a few.
He's taking on huge responsibilities.
I agree, but
and
did you
top
hear?
Of the tree, and I don't mind the fact that when they leave office, they make millions. They should do. They're top of the tree.
But the question is, Vicky, is right now they are able to make millions whilst being MPs and drawing a salary from the public purse. So I agree with you. If we could close all of that down, the second, the third, the fourth jobs, the directorships, absolutely, our MPs, I do think, should be paid more. I think the Prime Minister should be paid more whilst in office, for sure. But given we haven't got that kind of reform and they can have several other jobs outside work, do you think it is, I think I know what your answer is going to be, do you not think that it is slightly tin-eared of MPs to very likely be voting an above inflation pay rise through for themselves?
No, I think it's tin-eared of the rest of us, because these guys are taking on extra jobs. Because if they weren't an MP, because they were passionate about improving the country, rightly or wrongly, whether you agree with them or disagree with them, that's what they believe in, then they could work in a corporate company and earn £350,000 a year, no problem.
I've nothing against a pay rise if MPs only had a single job, but I just, which is being an MP, of course. But while I can't see that happening, I think we can't ignore the fact that it's hardly a coincidence they get all these second jobs by virtue of being an MP. So I think there should be some kind of recognition of that, and maybe some additional tax per additional job, because quite honestly, apart from those MPs who are being doctors, etc., which I appreciate, a slight flaw in my point. I think, the fact that you've got a job almost certain because you're an MP, because you can be a non-exec on various different boards, there should be some sort of tax to reflect that. And ideally to disincentivise people, of course, to have second jobs in the first place.
So this is a very interesting idea. And I've thought about it for some time, Tom. It will not surprise you. I have always thought that once one becomes an MP, one should give up outside interests, get paid more to do your job as an MP, and the exemption should be if you're working in public service. If you're working in a public service of some kind, fine, go ahead. But otherwise, I just don't think, whilst one is a sitting MP, one should be allowed to do a second job that is connected to a private business.